Thank you everyone today for attending leveraging technology to win work in heavy civil construction. So we're happy to have each of you here, but also we'd like to thank a couple of organizations for lending us their talent for today's session. So first of all, thank you very much, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, for giving us John Myler today so that he can participate in our webinar. Also, Sage Presence, thank you, Troy, for giving us your time and talents today, and also Sage Presence for lending you to us. And Procore, thank you, Procore, for giving us Drew Olson, who is also on our panel, and just really excited to have all of our panelists today. It's a great panel. And also, Trent, thank you for participating today and being voluntold to get on this webinar.
Of course.
We're happy to have you as well. All right. So for some of you that might be new to Datamate and DataBIM, which is our leading cloud-based drone photogrammetry software for the heavy civil construction market, if you want to learn a little bit more about it, please go ahead and scan this QR code. I'll give you just a second to do that. If you're interested in learning a little more, you can scan that, put in your information. I know we already have your information for the webinar, but if you would like to have a demo and learn a little bit more about our software and how it works and how it can help you on your job site, then please go ahead and scan that, and we'll be happy to give you a demo. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with today's great content. So first of all, I'd like to, again, introduce you to Troy Parkinson with Sage Presence. Sage Presence is a wonderful company that can really help you and your firm with your presentation skills and your video skills and just anything in between. They really are a great resource. And Troy today is going to help us with moderating our webinar. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Troy. Troy, please take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chaz. It's great to be here. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited that you can join us today for what is going to be an excellent conversation. Couple of quick housekeeping notes. Again, if you have questions along the way, feel free to throw those into the chat window. I'll be monitoring that throughout this process. It's going to be a jam-packed conversation, so this time is going to fly by. But first of all, we're going to do a quick introduction on everyone. They're going to give us a little background on themselves, and then I'll share with you kind of our high-level agenda on what you can expect during our conversation today. But first of all, I want to acknowledge and welcome John Myler, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. We have Drew Olson with Procore, and of course, Trent Hogan with Datamate. So it's a pleasure to have you all here. John, Drew, and Trent, give us a little bit of a background on what your experience is in history with the heavy civil industry. John, we'll start with you.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, so I've been with the department for just under 20 years now. Worked my way up after graduating from Penn State throughout the construction field, managing construction projects in the Pittsburgh region. That's where I'm centered. So our central office is actually in Harrisburg, but I'm in our Pittsburgh region. And in part of my extracurricular activities, as I like to call it, is all of our e-construction efforts that we've been really working on throughout my entire career, which is sort of a blessing here within our state. So I have a lot of experience in working with our developers and all of our kind of e-construction efforts throughout my whole career.
Excellent, wonderful. And Drew, your background and experience in heavy civil.
Yeah, sure. It's been kind of a fun ride. 23 years in the industry, 15 years in practice as a roadway design engineer. Spent a lot of time leveraging technology in that 15 years to do the fun stuff and less of the boring stuff, I will admit. So did a lot of geometric layout of complex projects, a lot of 3D modeling of that across the country on mega projects, and then ultimately ended up doing about 8 years of design build, where I found myself in the surveyor's office with that model data, trying to go faster to the field. So that was real exciting. And then I sort of left practice and went into technology. I've been in technology about 8 years now, both strategy and also sort of sales type roles, more industry SME. So yeah, so it's been an 8-year run helping drive these technologies back into the space. So it's just been a really fun journey from practice to technology, staying within the world of infrastructure and getting to work with folks like John and Trent, frankly, on driving e-construction and these types of technologies. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Excellent.
Really happy to be here with the team, and thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you. And Trent, of course, your intersection to this wonderful world.
So I'm currently here with Datamate. So thanks everybody for attending. I am the North American Vice President of Sales. I've spent 25 years in technology within the construction marketplace, both horizontal and vertical. Owned resellers. I owned the Prolog software reseller in Texas for a long time. Was Trimble in and out of the Trimble world for a long time. So spent a long time thinking about how to bring these type of technologies to market. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at today. And we're launching a Datamate here in the US last few years. So pretty exciting time to be doing so. Lots happening. So looking forward to the content here today.
Excellent, excellent. And thanks again for having us and creating this opportunity to have a great conversation. Our high-level agenda is this. We're going to try to hit 3 key zones over the course of this next hour. That first one we're going to talk about is sort of the state of the industry as it is right now. Then we're going to dive into the technology tools available to really make this work sing. And ultimately, what does the future of success look like? So if you're a firm that's looking to get into this work, what do you need to do? And if you're a firm in this work, what do you need to add to make sure that you're doing this effectively and creatively to the fullest extent possible? So with that, I'd like to start, John, really with your take on the state of the industry as you see it, not only from your position in Pennsylvania, but I know you're actively involved as well with some national organizations, and we'd love to get your take on that first question.
Sure. So, and I'll say, fortunately, Pennsylvania, we've had, again, quite a level of expertise in e-construction efforts, again, over the past 2 decades. And so I think that's certainly been a plus for us through electronic bidding, contract management, estimates, work orders. That's really where we started with all these things. In the teens, we moved into mobile construction and developed applications for our inspectors in the field to perform their old paper duties. Really kind of bringing them into the next generation of the industry. And, as we've continued through that, as you mentioned, I've been involved with some of the FHWA EDC efforts on various topics, from e-ticketing to e-construction, and hopefully future endeavors in those as well. And then I sit on the AASHTO team for innovative construction technologies. So always kind of looking at what else is out there and what do we need to further our data collection and facilitate those systems that we've generated over the years, and be able to give us more leverage into that information. We were still really in a lot of heavy paper documents, PDFs, dead information. It doesn't provide you anything. So it's really exciting to see us get into these endeavors, and the more data we're collecting and how we can manage that and use that over the years. I always use a good analogy for this, as a state agency. When I came into this, it really felt like it was the Titanic. You're not going to move this thing. It is the way we do it, and we continue to do it that way. And again, we were very fortunate throughout the years to be able to have the support clear through the industry to move technology forward and advance this, even from our contractor side. We have some great contractors here that recognized how kind of stuck the industry was in technology and not really leveraging those opportunities. So again, we've done really great here in the state, and certainly there's a lot of folks here that they're proud of that. But we're not done. There's a lot more to come, a lot more things to do. And I think that's what we're going to talk a lot about here today. And again, I think the other thing we'll probably talk about is, this is garnering attention across the country. With the support of FHWA, they've really pushed that forward, that as an industry, we need to get better. We need to use these technologies that are out there. So I see a lot of states looking to get into this stuff, and it's certainly a challenge for them to figure out maybe where to start. And that's some of the things I've tried to support folks on is don't make the same mistakes that I did. You know, how can I help you get a step ahead so you're not repeating those things again? So I think as a national level, you know, there's varying degrees of capabilities across different states, but I think everybody is moving in this direction and looking for how they can do it and be successful at it.
Excellent. And Drew, what are you seeing in terms of your vantage point about the industry as it stands today?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what John said there for sure, but they're not all Johns and PennDOTs out there, right? You know, even if he feels like he's made his share of mistakes along the route, that's only because he started so early, right? So that's where they are now, right? They're so far ahead. But sort of my perspective is, and we were chatting a little bit as we were getting started here, has sort of been, you know, parsing through at the end of the year, looking at my next year planning, that kind of stuff, parsing through all that whitehouse.gov data on the awarded projects and funding already as of October, a couple of dates there in October, they were putting that through. So as I pull that raw data and I just start to get a sense of, you know, where the parts are moving, which subsegments are getting the funding early, like broadband is a crazy one, right? That jumps out at me. I knew we had to get from COVID. I knew we had to get internet across the country. I didn't realize quite what an endeavor that was going to be or how serious we were about it. So that's just kind of one example that this data sort of jumps off the page at you, right? So that's one perspective is sort of, we have so much work coming now that the old days of sort of dragging through, no funding problems, not really pressing technology because it really, you almost were trying harder to do a job in the first place. I just think those days are so gone now. And we were right in the middle of a transition and it just sort of hyper jumped everything, right? And so that's why folks like PennDOT, who had been doing the work, you know, they're a little better positioned probably coming out of COVID and all that crazy scramble to cloud and all these different things that had to be done. It's just a new day now where we're back together. The funding is in place. Everybody got the technology message. And so, like John said, the feds have really done their work also for the past 10 years pushing. It's really a perfect storm here. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like, don't let a good pandemic go to waste. You know what I mean? Coming out of this, we got 5 or 10 years to really change the industry for the next 100. And if we sort of miss this, I could see it being business as usual in 2035 real easy. You know what I mean? If we're not careful. So anyways, I'll sort of stop there because collaboration is the next piece that I think is we'll get to later, but that's a huge part of what I'm seeing also right now. So anyways,
Excellent.
That's a bit of where my head's at heading into the end of the year.
Wonderful. And for you, Trent?
Yeah, picking up on a couple of things Drew said there. I mean, COVID had a couple of interesting byproducts from a construction standpoint, and especially from government agencies, right? I mean, I echo Drew's point. Not everybody's PennDOT, Caltrans, Utah, Texas, or some states that are really showing some leadership. But I think with government agencies, and I sold to them for a long time, COVID showed them where their data was so siloed. And people were now working remotely and they couldn't get access to the information. And so the power of the collaborative cloud platforms really showed up. You know, where, you know, 5 years ago, a lot of agencies were still kind of, you know, putting their toes in the water with this cloud stuff. I've seen that dissipate completely. So picking up on Drew's point there, I think there's an opportunity to really accelerate what we're doing because the cloud platforms really help that collaboration. But the other thing I would say is the perfect storm concept, right? You've got more work than ever coming out in the industry. You've got materials prices that are not going lower. You've got a labor force that's aging and a new group coming in, and there's a labor shortage. So all those combinations combined kind of create this pressure cooker. And I've always felt that having tried to sell these technologies and innovate how construction, you know, everyone knows that construction's been a laggard with technology, but the pressure cooker is here, right? All those variables are kind of coming together. And I always felt the owners needed to lead. The owners needed to provide guidance so the contracting community wasn't taking crazy wild risks because, you know, those risks cost a lot of money. So I think the owner community, and with, you know, PennDOT's example is perfect, is kind of leading that leading the charge there, saying, let's get these things on. I mean, California has state mandates that say we're going to use these technologies on projects. We've got way too much work, not enough funding, and we've got to get more efficient in how we deliver these projects. So we're at kind of a point, to Drew's point, and everybody said it, we're at a point where this transition is actually finally happening. And so now it's up to, the leaders to lead. Private sector needs to jump on this stuff. Owners need to allow for these things to be invested in, and the results will come. I'm convinced of that.
So as we
Troy,
talk about this, go ahead, Drew.
Troy, could I mess up the outline here for a second and ask a
Go right
question
ahead.
back to him on the topic here? It's kind of to John, maybe, because I admittedly, I'm a design guy, right? So as I talk to construction side of the house now for a living, right, I kind of have to come clean on that. But I'm wondering, because it's been sort of like 20 years of design consultants have been sort of buddied with the owners, sort of helping them through that technology drive. Owners are leading with consultants sort of in that design space. And construction was very different than that for the past 30 years, right? More of an adversarial, maybe, at a risk of saying something, more, keep my cards close to my chest. But I think that's changing also a bit with new contracting methods and just the overall sense that we are missing the boat as an industry if we don't have that GC input super early and open and honest. So is there something to that, John, on where we see this changing a little bit too, is from that historical relationships and your partnering as an owner?
Yeah. Maybe let me start with Trent first, and then I'll come back to your comments. But yeah, something you really hit there on a DOT level. One of the biggest things we're struggling with is, our staffing. Again, we have a lot of senior level people leaving and new blood coming in, and this technology is what they're looking for. And it's really great, when we bring interns in the summers and we hand them iPads. They don't expect that. They're like, wow. Like, you guys are on it. You guys develop these applications. Wow, this is okay. As a whole, you're not this old DOT stuck in the mud. You're on the cutting edge of things. So I think that's a great thing for bringing people in and engagement with new employees and helping them to be successful and thus us successful. And then to your Drew, to your contractor side of things. Certainly I could say over my career, when we started, it was a different world that we live in today. It was battles, contractor versus DOT, and battle it out. And it's much different now, for several reasons. Again, as an agency, we recognize that's not, we can't put every contractor out of business. We've got to partner. You've got to be successful at making money. We've got to get good products. How do we work that together? So we've done a lot on that level of partnering with our contractors. And I think certainly over my career, from what I've seen today, our contractors are much more engaged and partnering with us and working through these things and these technologies. Again, I think we have one local contractor that, if anybody's aware of CMU University, Carnegie Mellon, big robotics school, he recognized some of this and developed a little sub company, and they developed a robot. It's called TieBot. It runs on your bidwell rails and it ties the rebar mats. As a little robot goes around, finds all the connections and ties it, because he was struggling to find labor. And he said, I'm relying on labor to tie rebar and I can't get it. This thing can work overnight with one person watching it. So again, on that side, through our contractors, we've had a lot of support from them to say, we need to look into these technologies and how can they make us better at what we do. And again, even to the laborers, bending over, tying that rebar, that's not a fun thing. Man. Your back will be in pain. So from the labor side, we're a big labor union state. They were like, hey, that's work we're okay with not doing necessarily. So again, it's how you work across the agency at all levels and making sure everybody's understanding and involved in these discussions and partnering with us. We did the same thing with our e-ticketing, which we've moved forward through. Again, another kind of blessing from COVID, as you mentioned. really kind of throwing e-ticketing forward. And we brought in all those partners to really be a part of what we're moving forward with, and not excluding them like we would have done in the past and just said, you've got to deal with it. So yeah, I think all that, again, we've had a nice recipe here in the state to make us be successful.
And Troy, that's the last thing I'll say on that, and we'll go back. But if Brian Cawley's on the call or any of our FHWA friends, that is showing where their leadership does get the Titanic to finally change course. Because I'm thinking of 10 years ago when all the workshops and stuff was all around partnering. I barely knew what that meant. I thought, what is the topic? Like, I don't even get what we're talking about, but now it all makes sense, right? I mean, that broke down a lot of those barriers, I think, and so anyways, all right, great.
I think you're right. I'll add one more thought, don't exclude your technology vendors as part of that ecosystem, pull them in.
Absolutely.
You don't have to pick the perfect product. Where a lot of these tools out here are really good, and pick the handful that you want to work with and bring us a part of this thing, just like a design build project almost. We're engaged to the industry as, talking from the sales guy here, right? Obviously our interest is in selling you product, but we generally care, we're here to be part of the project. And so I would argue too, not just the design build from a designer and a contractor, but as you deploy this stuff, put us to work on that initiative too. We can really help.
The days of the hard sell are over, right? I mean, literally.
Yeah,
you're going to buy.
We have to work
at some point.
We have to work together anyway as vendors, technology vendors, and we're partnering all the time, right? So don't be shy of that if you're out there.
Yeah, yes.
Making those
as you
investments.
talk about this technology, I'm curious, you've kind of talked about it in a high level perspective. You've referenced the cloud, you've referenced some tools, but for each of you, what are the pieces of technology that are essential? How should people be thinking about these? You've referenced e-tickets and a number of other things, but John, for you, when you're working with new partners or you're implementing new things, what are the must-have technologies to make this work better?
Well, just again, a little more background on the state. We have a lot of custom built systems. We didn't get some of the off the shelf things for our construction management systems. So that's always been a struggle for us is, well, like we're so customized. How do we fit in this new world? And again, technology is a great asset to that. And what we've really found through some of our endeavors now is what we just want to look for is, and again, this is kind of leading to future discussions, but we'll do now, is that collaboration. Yeah. We don't want to sole source something and make everybody use what we're using. We did that with e-ticketing through some APIs. Our suppliers can use any e-ticketing software they want, as long as that can push it into our system through an API. We've done that with our scheduling software. We have the scheduling software. A lot of contractors don't use that for their scheduling, but you can convert it into that file and present that to us, and it works in our system that we're using. So I think a lot of that has to be a part of the conversation. And since we have those things now we are looking out to what other points where we're not collecting data that we need to collect the data, and how can we collect that data? And maybe that's like through a DataMate with their software. We've used that, and get drone flights out there on a project and see what kind of data we can collect from those drone flights, and what does that leverage us for measurement purposes or as-built information, cross sections, great stuff. And then as we look to move into digital delivery with our projects, so we're going to be in 2025 looking to move forward with all new projects being model based. How are we going to leverage that information? How are we going to use that information? What kind of things do we want to attach to that model for file retention? And that collaboration needs to be there. There's so many players out there, as Trent mentioned, with so many capabilities. It's all about just making sure everybody's working together and able to share that information across platforms to build to something more than just its single parts.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, the tools are getting easier to use. also. It's not as if you need a PhD in software to run some of these tools in the worlds that we're in today, and they're being developed. The other thing to keep an eye on, and so data is the common theme here, and sharing and collaborating on the data. I mean, that's really the point, right? I mean, you can get excited about bells and whistles all you want, but how are you consuming what we're collecting, and how is it being applied to your projects? And we look at how are we impacting a project's ROI with whatever data we're able to get the team to consume. And I think what you're going to see from the trend standpoint is a lot more use of artificial intelligence to do some of that thinking and presenting these examples to you. I mean, one of the things that we're working on, for example, is integrating our scheduling software with our model to look at our product takes drone images and creates a model of the as-is condition of your job site. So if you're looking at it month over month over month, you can see the progress of your site. So, taking a schedule, comparing it to what the as-is looks like and the design, and letting those three things work together to produce some insights, finding deviations, helping you make decisions in advance of any problems. That's just a simple example from us, but it's happening across the whole industry. I see stuff every day that comes out. So being able to interpret the data, combine the data, let these products work together, it's getting easier and easier and easier, and even consuming the data is getting easier too. So it's not as scary, it's not as scary for maybe a generational change, right? To John's point, I mean, we see a lot of examples on that, where young people are being teamed with the older generation with maybe the project wisdom, and the technology youngsters that have, the interest in the tools, and combine those, find ways to team that up. So you're not losing the wisdom, but you're also taking advantage of technology. It can help projects move along faster. So it's more in terms of, implementing and executing on it. But I think the data, understanding what your data strategy is, kind of where it resides, how it works together, and what kind of insights you're trying to produce, I think that's going to show the biggest acceleration in the return, right?
Yeah, and I think kind of combining what Drew mentioned earlier too, that you hit on perfect, was this a lot of this was geared to the design side, as Drew mentioned before. Now it's kind of molding over and kind of coming out into the construction side, and we're different. Again, those are engineered draftsmen, CAD people. They want all those tools and all those different features, and you get out in the field, that's too much for us. So yeah, really making it kind of user friendly and get to the information quickly and just what I need. I don't need all those bells and whistles. You need to give me what I need out in the field, which isn't that CAD level experience. So I think that's a great point to build on.
Same would be true moving it to the final phase, which is the asset management phase. So they need the tools that they need too, right? So there's a whole continuum. I mean, there's 50 years of maintaining that
data
asset.
is the thread, right? And that data is the thread.
Right. And that's where we're getting. That's the trend that I'm seeing. It's finally getting the silos away, and we're getting more horizontal with the flow of the data.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to add there is, John, you picked up on it right before I could. I was going to say, the way Trent was describing that and really made it clear to me that this isn't CAD in some design package for the field, right? Nobody wants that. Draftsmen don't want that. I mean, like I just said, I leveraged technology to do a very specific task in design because I couldn't stand the idea of producing plans, right? I mean, literally. So that's not what we want to recreate in the field, and we're not. And that's the beauty of cloud, mobile, this data layer, right? It's a whole different world. And I think that's going to help us with our staffing and our recruitment needs in those later phases. Because I'll tell you what, man, nobody's racing out to draft sheets for 12 hours a day as a designer. You know what I mean? We do it for about 3 or 4 years. It's a path to success. It's like a badge of honor in design. But dude, nobody wants to do that, right? I mean, it's not the funnest job, So that's why I'm just more excited again. And I'll say a risky statement here, since I am one of these guys. I feel like that mindset of design and how complicated the technology is in that space, that was kind of a shield of honor for our designers and our owners a little bit as they're trying to lead this future state, right? So there is a little bit of a combat between a design team, owner, whoever you want to say, wherever they are, thinking about what the future is, pure model based. Hardcore this and that, right? Reliance on CAD and model softwares. And the construction's going, look, I just want to fill out a freaking inspection report and like everybody on the same sheet. You know, like that's literally what I'm talking about here. So as I think about those things, Troy, I was getting myself down to specific technology things to answer this question, but really I think I was going to say mobile and cloud is a close 1-2 for me, but I don't think mobile means anything if you don't have the cloud. You know, I think we proved that too. So I think I'm back to cloud is really the hugest change we've seen. AI comes with that right on the heels, like Trent was saying. But anyways, that's kind of my perspective. And this drifting from design world of 15, 20 years now into construction and this fight over technology and who's right, who's wrong, what do we need? Like, you know, it's an interesting time.
And Drew, those are the trends for us publishers, right? The people who are producing the products are thinking along those lines, right? How are we making the data flow and how are the users getting the insights that they want? So I guess that was my original point too. It's just getting easier to consume, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There had been talk about this idea of owners taking the lead and helping this transition occur. John, I'm curious, you know, you talked about finally getting the Titanic to move in your state, but what are you seeing from colleagues across the nation on how they're helping take that lead? And if they're not taking the lead, what needs to be done for them to do that?
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the biggest struggles most of them have, because again, inherently they all want this information, this technology. It's just, how do I go about doing it? Where to start? You know, and I think even kind of Trent hit on that earlier in the discussion here today, that just start somewhere, find something. Like, what do you want to do? Find something and just do it. And there's a lot of you know, accessibility to these things. There's grant monies and a lot of those opportunities out there to maybe do something you didn't think you could do before, but you got to start somewhere. That's one thing, but also finding these leaders. You know, we're very fortunate here within the state that we have a handful of leaders in various positions and across the agency that can really help support this and push this stuff forward. And you need to find those people, you know, if you're going to be successful, because if you try something and somebody somewhere else doesn't want to do that, you're not going to get very far. So you have to really kind of do that. And again, as we talked, FHWA has really been supportive in all of this. We do a lot with the stick grants. You know, that's a great asset for your state to be able to get this information or get the monies to support these types of endeavors and try something in your state and then take it to the next step after that's over. So you really do have to find folks within your agency. This wasn't, when I went to school, I never thought I'd be doing this technology stuff. I was going to be an engineer. So again, that's kind of the thing. And I do that today. When I get newer staff, I'm trying to find people that will replace me one day, to bring them up in this stuff and keep this technology moving forward, because I don't know that we're ever going to get to a point where we say, that's it, we're done. There's nothing more to do.
No.
There's always going to be something more to do. And just when I think we're pretty good now, there's something new, AI, you know, it's like, wow, okay, what can I do with that? So yeah, I think you always have to be thinking about that. And again, finding those players across the agency. And again, we talked about through contractors and everything else. There's a lot of folks out there that you kind of slowly have to build these teams up within your states.
Yeah, that's part of the theme here. Part of the theme here is, you know, looking at service providers. How do we get more work from the owners, or who's spending the money? And that's my biggest recommendation is, if you're a contractor, engineering firm, or whatever your service you're providing is, make sure you know what your owners are doing and align with what their goals are, right? We talk about that all the time when we're selling to our clients. Make sure we're selling into the high priorities of the client. Well, you got to understand where the DOT, if it's a DOT, where they're headed and what they're investing in, and get in alignment. It doesn't have to be the exact same products, but just make sure the initiatives are in alignment, because it'll, to me, John, right? I mean, I know some of the contractors, some of the work you're doing with your contractor community is very collaborative. And that's the key, right? I mean, like Texas, for example, there's a lot of states going through some big innovation changes. They're doing long-term strategy and planning right now. Get involved with that and listen to what they're saying, and make sure you're mirroring what they're doing.
Did you have something to add to that, Drew?
Yeah, I did. I lost my thought now, darn it. I was reading the question there in the chat.
Yeah, well, let's
But
jump to that. We actually have a couple of
well,
questions that have come in from the chat window. So let me read the question out loud here, and then Drew, I'd love for you to take it. So the question that came in from Michael was, what features does Procore for design, bid, and build function in public infrastructure contracts? How would you answer that, Drew? And if you have other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat window as well. Go ahead, Drew.
yeah. Hey, real fast though, I would just want to add to what John was saying, and I'll answer that question. When you're looking for your leaders too, they may not look like the leaders of the past, right? I mean, John's a young looking guy, I will admit,
Thank
not
you.
as old as Trent it looks to me, but you know what I mean? These leaders might be 32 years old, and we didn't know that before. Literally, I mean, I could name a guy, Andrew Pangalo out of Indiana DOT, who's just a stud. I mean, and if he's 35, I would question it. You know what I mean? And he's gone from headquarters, trying to push this stuff back out to a corridor to keep sure he's got his chops and to bring technology out to a corridor because he couldn't get it done in HQ. Did that for 2.5 years, and now he's back to HQ trying to drive it all over again. So our leaders could look very different than what they did before. They could be the same, but they could look very different. And I just encourage that part as well. Back to the question. I think the question is, where does Procore fit in the overall design, bid, build type of projects that we're talking about with John, maybe? Procore is laser focused on the construction phase. I will tell you that. We put all of our effort and thinking into that construction phase. So we pick up for pre-con in that bidding and estimating phase, all the way through execution, wrap up, handover, asset closeout, that kind of thing to package up for your closeout and commissioning projects. But we 1000% stick in that estimate, bid, through execution, and then handover is where we continue to make our bets by bringing new things we're doing in that phase, like making acquisitions of mapping technology to put all of the Procore technology and your project construction data on a map now more easily than needing to connect to something else. So we're really excited about that, about having our own map now that can so much more easily then connect to other systems. So that's our bread and butter. There's no two ways about it. We do love the design model. We know that's the future. So we have design collaboration tools, BIM tools, so model in the field on mobile, totally capable, running and managing some of those clash detection activities that might come out of Navisworks if you're using some of these tools. We tie into that phase of it, but all in the spirit of constructability, pre-con, this kind of stuff. Hope that answers your question.
And with a big partner focus too. We're a Procore partner, and they've got a really nice partner environment for other vendors to integrate with Procore. So take a look at that too.
I was going to say our mantra is, and really it's the mantra of technology. It's not just Procore, right? But we have to solve a real problem for John, and we have to fit into his other apps. Like that's it. We don't start a conversation without that. Like literally, there is no sale without that. And back to John's point, pick something, fix something, move on to the next one. We get it. We all get it. We fix a problem and fit in. That's the only way to win around here.
All of you have been speaking about this importance of collaboration, and it sounds to me that the success in this process is about taking that first step. Drew, you and I spoke recently about the importance of also failing forward. I would love for you to take a conversation on that collectively amongst you all about being okay with knowing that there might be some failure, but how do you move forward in that space?
Yeah. I forget exactly how that came up, but I'd never really heard or appreciated the term of fail forward, fail fast, any of that kind of thing. So I don't know if that sort of comes from technology or development of a product in general, or it's not the core design world, right? We never talk about failing fast. Like fail just doesn't come up in our really, right? That's a problem, we avoid it. But now I really do get it. And back to John's point, I think of just, even if you don't know what to do, you start. You know what I mean? Pick the main thing that's driving the team crazy and call a few folks and see who you like to work with. Back to Trent's point, it's a little less about the technology today and more about people. And I always forget that, even when I was delivering projects, and you think of all these variables and factors, and then something happens, you're like, this all got screwed up by one person. Like, how did I not see that coming? Like, I forget that it's down to people generally, So I think that's just kind of part of it. When you're picking what you're going to do, pick some technologies, meet some people, see who's like-minded. I think that's where it's a softer skill than it used to be, I think, you know?
Yeah, I think the public sector obviously has a little more challenge to invest because of the procurement and whatnot, right? And they've got more laws to abide by. But failing fast, failing forward, I would add you're not going to fail very far anymore because most of these vendors you're working with, it is about the people, but we are only surviving because we have to go this route. This is how we run our businesses every day. So take advantage of it, right? You're not gonna make a mistake that's gonna cost you 20 years. It's not
Right.
what, that's not the case, right? So pick something and go.
We're steering that ship. And when I say fail, I mean, it's like a half a degree back. I mean, you're always tweaking and figuring and bringing in another partner. And like, I mean, that's what failure looks like in technology, right? A bridge didn't fall down. That's not what we're talking about failure. We're talking about learning as we go, build the plane as we're flying it, all those sort of cliche terms, right? But it all means the same thing. It means go. There's no huge risk here,
I think,
John,
thank you. Thank you, Drew, for saying I'm still young. That's great. I appreciate it. But I am old enough to have seen some of this stuff over the years. And I think, again, that's just because it didn't work before, doesn't mean it won't work now. Again, a lot of our ways we used to do things with put out a contract, develop us some software, they come back 2 years later and say, here you go. And we go, that's not what we wanted. Doesn't do half the stuff I wanted it to. That's not what I ordered. Those days aren't really there anymore. Even with our internal development for our applications, we have what are called 4-week sprints. Every 4 weeks, they're giving a deliverable. If we don't like that deliverable, we can comment on it. And guess what? 4 weeks later, it's fixed. It's different, And so, again, you really start to garner that support that they're listening to me. We're a part of this conversation. And I think, you guys are all in that same kind of world from what I've seen with various business partners we've worked with over the years. You guys are in that sort of mindset of, hey, tell us something you don't like. You don't like it? We can adjust, we can move. And we see that feedback and we go, okay, this is good. We've got that collaborative discussion going on, not just here's the product we have and we're done. Good luck.
Right.
So I think again, everything that we've been talking about here, that is key and is very important in today's society. That's what we want. We want that collaborative, work together, solution out problems, and everybody's successful.
We're coming into about 15 minutes before the end of this. We're cruising fast, conversation's flowing. I wanted to kick this one to all of you and take it as you will, whoever wants to kick it off first. But I'd love to hear about the key challenges you're seeing in heavy civil right now and what opportunities exist because of those challenges.
Who's going first? Me?
Go ahead, John. Yeah.
Okay.
You're the guy spending here, so we'll let you do that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it today. Staff across the entire organization. Contractors can't find people. We can't find people. Nobody can find people. So it's all about doing more with less. Which again, I've heard that my whole career. Do more with less. It's another one of those cliche things. But really, that's where we're at with this. So the easier we can make things for folks to do, the better. Again, this technology is what people want. It's what they expect. So when they come in and they see these tools, it makes our industry more, attractive to a lot of people out there that maybe wouldn't have been prior to that. But that's also some of the risk too, is as we get more technical with this stuff, is how are we training folks? How are we bringing them in and making them feel supported through that process, which again goes back to the ease of use and all those things. So that's really probably the biggest challenge I see in our industry from the DOT's perspective in the next few years.
I'll go next. That plays into kind of my lens, then looking at you, as a customer or an industry they're trying to support. You know what I mean? This is back to the perfect storm a bit, where the haves and have-nots, it's a little wider and harder, right? If John hadn't done and PennDOT hadn't done all the work that they've done over the last 10, 15, 20, however long it's been, forever, then coming on this side of the pandemic and the funding, it's even harder now to break off those teams and go figure out try it, just go do one thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden they're scrambling. They don't have staff to deliver the projects they have funding for all of a sudden, right? Which is a totally different problem in the last 15 years. So now, we're saying just start, get that toe in the pool. So I'm the guy on the phone saying we need to start somewhere. So I hate to break it to a DOT, but to implement a technology sort of statewide and really have business processes mapped and standard operating procedures so you can onboard those people faster, John, to bring people up to speed, get them productive faster, all that sort of stuff. It's going to take 2 years from when we start. I mean, and that's a pretty good engagement, probably, to be fair. Might be more 2.5 years really to get all the way there. So the point to me is we have to start. We can't be afraid to allow our partners to get the idea, come do some of the heavy lift, show you, let you be the board, if you will, right, to what you're trying to do, and get us jumping through the hoops. Let us do some of that work if humanly possible, because that's what we're good at. And we've got engineers, we've got people from DOTs, like, this is the fun stuff. That is the fun part for Trent and my teams, is that engagement and getting it figured out and getting to that 2-year mark. I mean, and all those little corrections we're going to make along the way, So
but there's ways in which there's a lot of ways, strategies to do this too, right? Like if you're a DOT, you don't have to think about the whole statewide rollout. I mean, it is a process. So pick a project or two, and you can make modest investments, partner with your contractors, partner with folks like us, whoever you select, whatever the type of project it is, and grow it, right, organically. You don't have to make huge investments and huge risks here.
Right.
So there's a path, right? So lean on us. Let us help you, tell you what has worked and what hasn't worked, and accelerate your path, or wherever you're at in the spectrum. I would argue the same thing for a contractor. And we've got national contracting customers that they're doing entirely different work in the East than they are in the West. Right. And so we have to think about what region they're in and where they're at.
All sorts of stuff.
They don't know what they're doing together, which is okay too. That's kind of the same idea, right? Build it up in pockets. I will say on a positive note, though, in the last 2 years even, Drew, I mean, you and I attend a lot of conferences. So I attend a lot of owner conferences and technology conferences. The feeling has changed. I mean, the buzz in the owner environments has completely changed. John, I mean, around the AASHTO meetings, and I'm thinking like iHeaps and some of these conferences where these people are coming, the energy is finally there. And so I'm encouraged by that going forward for sure. But my original
from a DOT's perspective, you hit it, Trent, right there, was small things, one project, two projects in a small district that is willing to support this technology. If other parts of the state aren't really up on technology, in our district, Pittsburgh region, we're very into the technology. Give it to us. Let us try it out, and we'll tell you if it's good or bad.
Right.
So yeah, that's a great way to get into a DOT, is to, again, small level, low risk, just try it out.
And I can say
that's part of the 2-year path, right, Trent? I mean, that's all
that's
part
exactly
of.
right.
That's why it takes 2 years.
Yep.
I mean, literally, because you got to make sure it's right and all that. And that might be another great way to find your internal leaders and champions that you didn't know you had. If you're sort of putting it out to the teams, who's looking to try something, those folks that put their hands up, they could be your future leaders in headquarters, I mean,
that's exactly, and you know what? I working with DOTs across the country, we have to find the states that want to be leaders, because I can't not work with the leaders, right? So, but even the leaders in those leading states say, we're looking for our leaders. I mean, John, you're looking for those guys internally. There's a couple states that come to mind. There's certain districts or regions or whatever they call them. We're going to start here because that's where our mind share is around. Let's take some risk here and let's try some new stuff, and the rest will follow. Yep. So that's human nature, I mean, it's just the way. Not everybody's, and not every. Yes, exactly. But that's the way. That's the process. I think, Drew, you're talking about, right? Leaders will take a shot at it. It doesn't have to be huge gaping risks and. Organically kind of grow, but don't wait. Just go. Right. Just get started. Right. Just get started.
And don't be afraid to call salespeople. That's my last message, man.
If it's Drew and Trent, watch out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, seriously, Those days are just gone. We don't even train
Yeah.
that way. Literally, we train for people to figure out what the biggest need is for John and figure out if we got a solution for it. That's how we train salespeople. I got news for you. You know what I mean? I don't know what. Before I was in sales, I wouldn't have known what, you know what I mean? I didn't like to talk to salespeople either, of course, but now I see it as this is the fun part. I mean, this is where the ideas come. This is where you're going to get your help from. There's just
You really
no
are.
way around.
It's funny, you know, it's kind of a laughable joke here, but it's the truth, right? I mean, use us as you would a design partner. I mean, honestly,
Right.
and put your
Right.
vendors to the, whether it's he and I or anybody else, but put your vendors to
Right.
work. Say, hey, vendor A, I want you to work with vendor B, figure this out and come back to me. I mean,
Yeah,
we'll do it.
that's a good
We will
test
do
if you
it.
want to partner with them or not.
Yeah, that's right. And even the vendors that haven't been willing to do it in the past are doing it today because we know that's necessary.
Exactly.
Everything's moving too
They got
fast.
no choice. I mean,
They got
we're
no
trying,
choice.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're all
Yeah.
talking it. They at least say it, right? I mean, it's movement in the right direction.
Yeah.
You talked about conferences, Trent, and I'm curious to know for those out there listening, what are the must-attend conferences in the upcoming year? The things that for folks that are wanting to make headway in this industry, what are the conferences they should attend? And Drew, I'd be curious, and John as well, what are the ones that are must-attends?
You know, I would, so for us, I mean, they're expensive investments for vendors, right? And you know, when you look at the old model, I mean, people go to conferences to place orders. No, they come to conferences to share ideas. So we're really looking for thought leadership in the conferences that we attend. We also are looking at a lot more of the ecosystem effect. So, you know, if you've got if you're a regional contractor and you want to see what's happening, go to the PennDOT annual construction conference or the TxDOT or wherever you're doing business, right? And share ideas amongst your peers, and you can interact with those your owners who you're doing business for. Those are good. The DOTs have some really good thought leadership conferences, and you know, in the Astro conferences, I mean, they're doing good work in these committees. But you know, from a vendor standpoint, we want to be part of those discussions, and sometimes we're not. I mean, we're the vendors, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
Drew, would you agree? Like I see you on the road quite a bit. We're
Oh,
doing similar
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't go for sale. So again, a plug to engage with tech folks when you see them. You don't gotta,
Yeah.
you don't gotta avoid them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're not there to take a sale order. We know that. I mean, that's not how this works, literally. So, but committee on construction, to your point, how attitudes are changing. And I hadn't been for a couple of years, and I don't know how many I missed exactly either through COVID and all that. But I'd gone pre-COVID and then sort of post-COVID this last year, and night and day difference in the conversations, the openness, just every aspect. So committee on construction is just a home run for what we're talking around e-construction and digital delivery and these things. But back to sort of me scrubbing that federal data on projects or the announced funding that's already been out. You know, I'm starting to scratch around at some of those water conferences. And then, you know, I mentioned broadband just lightly there in the beginning, which I don't know a single thing about, but man, are we funding that like crazy. So, you know, renewables, water, and the DOT space is where I focus. And I'm just going to grow a little into water for my own knowledge, but things like the Committee on Construction, I know folks like IHEAP, my experience has been a little bit more designy there. Again, that design leading a direction where I used to live. But I think that's changing even a little bit,
That's
John.
changing too. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, those are the things I think of as top line. If I just wanted to pick two or three, like that's where I'm spending my time this year.
Any add-ons, John?
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add in is look to the FHWA EDCs. So
Yes.
they have a lot of events. So, you know, again, they're tailored to specific topics for the most point. So again, keeping an eye on their website and seeing what they've got going on throughout the year, you might find some things that interests me. That's something I want to get into, or again, as a vendor, you might look at it and say that's something I can do. I can facilitate that function. So let me participate in that.
We're coming up to the top of the hour. We got about 2 minutes left before we wrap. We know your time is valuable, so I have one final question for our panelists each. What excites you about 2024? And Drew, I'll start with you, then we'll go John, and then finish with Trent.
The opportunity, to put it simply, the opportunity is there's never been a confluence like this to be on any side of the three-legged stool of delivery, technology, owner. I mean, it's nuts. This next 10 years is kind of the highlight for our careers, especially as gray-haired guys. I mean, what a way to go out and finish strong, you know? So that's just opportunity is what I would leave it with.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'd probably say similar. It's what are we going to look to do in the next year? What new features are we going to have? What new software vendors? You know, there's always new technology coming out, and that's kind of the interesting thing for us. And over the next 2 years, we're going to have a lot of things kind of coming in line with information, which is great. And what other things can we capture along the way? But yeah, it's great opportunity ahead.
Coming from the vantage point of a little smaller organization than a say DOT or a Procore, and as you know, this has never been a better time to grow a business because of all the opportunity, of course, but the ecosystem is finally taking shape. You know, construction has never had, technology ecosystems exist in so many markets, you know, even manufacturing, distribution. I mean, they're a lot better ecosystem selling environments from a vendor standpoint, but the ecosystem in construction is finally happening. The silos are broken down. This is, you know, we're helping to lead something that's critical going forward. So, and being a part of it, you know, I mean, even though we're selling, we're still a part of a project, you know. John, being a part of your projects matters to our team. We want to be you know, I'm invested 25 years in trying to help the industry move forward.
Exactly.
So we care too, you know. I've never built anything or designed anything, but I feel like I'm a part of it. So I think there's a lot of energy to in the imagery is changing around what we're doing.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'll
Well,
end,
thank
hey,
you
I'll
so
end with
much.
that.
Go ahead, Drew. I know you got one more word in. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but that is the point, right? I mean, it's a new day. We are all doing this. Anyone that calls you about infrastructure does it because they love it. Nobody does this because it's easy or you fell into it, or, you know, like, we all have passion for this no matter what your past is. So that is one great thing about our industry. I do love everybody I run across, you know, honestly.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and as you can see, everyone, this is a panel that could keep going for a full other hour and another hour and another hour. So I want to thank John, Drew, and Trent for this great conversation. I want to thank DataMate for hosting this event, Procore and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation as well for contributing these great thoughts to this conversation today. So thank you, everyone, for attending. It was great to have you here, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep, thanks,
See you guys.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.